The Prince and the Pauper. Tom Canty was born in a poor part of London. His father, John Canty, was a thief. His mother was a beggar. His parents did not want him. On the day when he was born, Edward Tudor was also born. Edward's father was Henry VIII, King of England. Tom lived on a dirty street. Many poor people were living in the same building. His clothes were rags. His twin sisters also wore rags, but they were kind. His mother was kind too. But his father and grandmother were cruel. They liked to get drunk and fight. John Canty made his children beg and beat them if they didn't get money. One of Tom's neighbors was the good old priest, Father Andrew, who had once worked for the king. He taught Tom Latin and how to read and write. He also taught the children good manners. Although he was poor, Tom was happy. He liked to dream that he was a prince. Tom wanted to wear beautiful clothes and live in a palace. Tom was ashamed of his dirty old clothes, and so he started to pretend to be a prince. His speech and manners would change when he pretended to be a prince. His friends would sometimes join in his games. Often, they played as if they were his servants. One day, Tom found the king's palace. Men dressed in shining armor guarded the gates. He saw a boy dressed in beautiful clothes. The boy must be the prince, Tom thought. "Watch your manners!" shouted a guard. He pushed Tom away, but the young prince told the guard to open the gates. "Open the gates and let him in!" yelled the prince. Edward took Tom to his room in the palace. They ate a feast and talked to each other. The prince asked Tom if his father was kind to him. "No, my father and grandmother beat me often, but my sisters and mother are very gentle," Tom said to the prince. Tom told the prince about the games he liked to play near his home. "In summer, we swim in the river. We like to splash each other, dive and shout." "Oh, I would be happy to lose all my money if I could have such fun," cried the prince. "Tell me more." "We dance and sing. We play in the sand and make mud pies," Tom told the prince. The prince liked Tom's stories. He wanted to play outside of the palace. "Let me dress in your clothes," said the prince. "I would like to dress in your clothes too. Then I can be a prince for a day," said Tom. A few minutes later, Edward was dressed in rags and Tom was wearing silk robes. The two boys stood in front of a mirror. They looked like twins. The guard hit the prince as he ran through the gates. "I am Prince Edward. I will hang you for hitting me," said the prince. At night, the prince lost his way. His bare feet hurt after walking so far. He tried to find Tom's house. "Tom's parents will take me back to my father, the king," the prince told himself. Suddenly, John Canty grabbed Edward by the neck. He was drunk and asked, "How much money do you have for me?" "I'm not Tom. I'm the prince," said Edward. "Take me to the king." Tom's father shook Edward. "You're mad, son. I will take you home and beat you," John Canty said. On the way home, they met Father Andrew, who tried to stop John Canty from hitting the boy. "Don't you love your son?" the old priest asked John Canty. "Mind your own business," shouted Tom's father. He hit Father Andrew. The priest fell down on the ground. He was badly injured, so he could not stand up. John left the priest and took Edward home. When they got home, John said to his wife, "Tom has no money for us. Don't give him any food." The prince was beaten and sent to bed. Tom's mother was worried about her son. "I'm the prince," he kept saying to her. "Tom, you have gone mad," she sobbed. "You are not a prince. Stop saying that." As the night went on, she began to wonder about her son. He said such strange things in his sleep. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. A voice said, "John Canty, you hit Father Andrew, and he is dead. Run for your life. The police will come for you." John Canty escaped with his family. Tom Canty, meanwhile, admired his fine robes in front of the mirror, but he began to feel lonely. He was missing his friends. Tom was very worried. If people found out that he was not the real prince, he would be punished. One of the court ladies ran out of his room when he told her that he was really a beggar. Rumor that the prince had gone mad spread around the palace very quickly. Tom was very nervous. "Will the king kill me when he knows I am only a beggar?" Tom worried. He looked outside the door of his room and saw only servants. They bowed to him. He quickly shut the door. King Henry VIII had heard the rumors. "Bring my son to me," the king ordered. Servants took Tom down a long hallway to the room where the king was lying on a couch. He was seriously ill. The king hugged Tom. "You are my son. You will be king one day," Henry told him. King Henry VIII could not understand why his son could not remember details about his life. "What is this silly game you're playing?" he asked Tom. "You must have a fever. I order my doctors to make you well." The king decided to hold a party for his son, who would one day become king. The next day, Tom was dressed as the prince and went to the party. He had many servants to look after him. Later, everyone returned to the palace to rest. The king was upset because he could not find his grand seal. He used the special seal to stamp all his letters. While all this was happening, the true prince had managed to escape from John Canty. Edward was very angry when he found out that there was a party for the prince. "That Tom Canty is a liar! I'm the real prince," Edward told himself. "I will have Tom Canty killed for this crime." The prince stood outside the big hall where the party was being held. He ordered the soldiers to open the door. Everyone laughed when he said that he was the real prince. People wanted to throw him into the pond. But then a man said to Edward, "Don't worry, I will help you. My name is Miles Hendon." Miles saved Edward from being hurt by the crowds of people. He led him through the dark streets of London. Suddenly, someone said, "The king is dead!" The little prince became very sad. Tears started running down his cheeks. His father was dead. Now Edward was the king. Miles took Edward to an old, dirty inn. "Miles, thank you for helping me. I will make you a knight," Edward told him. While eating, Miles started to tell Edward about his own life. Miles's father was a nobleman and quite rich. But his brother Hugh had planned to throw Miles out of the family. Hugh told lies about Miles to their father. "My father believed Hugh, and I was banished from the house. So I became a soldier and went to war," said Miles. Edward was very interested in his story. "I plan to go and see my father. I would like to tell him what has happened to me," said Miles. Edward promised to help Miles tell his father the truth. After a few days, Edward and Miles arrived at Miles's home. Hendon Hall was a beautiful mansion. Miles met his brother, but Hugh pretended not to know Miles. "Don't you know who I am? I am your brother." "Where is my father?" Miles said to Hugh. "I have never seen you before," Hugh replied. "Both my father and brother died many years ago." Miles was shocked to learn of his father's death. He was also surprised that Hugh had taken control of the land that really belonged to him. Hugh became angry. "They are liars!" he shouted. "Put them both in jail!" He ordered his servants. Edward and Miles were taken away to a cold, dirty jail. There were a lot of people in jail. Miles knew that Hugh was cruel to the local people. Many of the people worked on the land. "I will release these poor people," said Edward. A few days later, Hugh had Edward and Miles thrown off his land. They headed back to London. On the day when Tom would become king, Edward went to Westminster Abbey to stop the ceremony. "Do not put that crown on his head. I am the king." People turned to see a boy dressed like a beggar. All were surprised. The beggar looked like the boy who was about to become king. "It is true. He is the king, not me," cried Tom. Tom ran to Edward. He bowed and kneeled before the real king. The king's protector asked Edward many questions. Edward answered them all correctly. The king's protector knew the last question would prove whether he was a liar or not. The protector asked, "Where is the king's grand seal?" Tom helped Edward remember where it was. Edward told the servants exactly where to find it. Everyone was happy to have found the real king. The king made Miles a knight, just as he had promised. Edward also learned how well Tom had ruled the palace. Tom became Edward's best friend. Miles also got back his land from his brother Hugh. Tom, his mother and sisters became rich. They all lived happily ever after.